nonstop.com.
From Action News Jax, this is a Hurricane Irma special report.
Irma is moving through Georgia, just north of us, as a tropical storm now. Irma hit northeast Florida overnight as a Category 1 hurricane. Within the last 90 minutes, Russell Colburn helped save a woman from her flooded Riverside home. And some of the worst damage we've seen so far is in Volcano Beach, where at least one home you can see there has just fallen, collapsing almost right into the ocean. But the damage goes much farther north. Take a look in Amelia Island, water right up to the front doors of several homes there. And we thank you for staying with Action News Jax right through all of this. I'm Tanika Hughes.
And I'm John Bachman. We want to get you caught up on the latest, but Russell Colburn has been live for us in Riverside and giving us really dramatic live looks at what's happening out there as neighbors are helping neighbors. And Russell, we understand you may be on another rescue mission.
Well, it could be developing, okay? So we're in the Riverside area still. I don't know the name of this street, but we're about to intersect with St. John's, as you can see up there. And look, there's a person with a kayak, some type of board, up to his waist. I think he miscalculated exactly what he was looking at when he came out here. So we're going to see if he needs a hand. Or he could have been going out to salvage something that came loose from his home. But you can see him there. Look how that'll give you an idea of how deep the water is. And I'm with the Gillum family on this military-grade truck, and we've been helping people. So we're going to see if this guy needs help. Sir, you need some help? You sure? All right, he's saying he doesn't need help. What's your name, man? Justin. So what are you doing?
I'm just getting pictures. Right now.
He says he's just getting pictures. He's on his kayak. All right, the water's up to your waist. You sure you don't want a hand?
Yeah, I'm good for now.
Okay. Well, he's good. So that's good.
Look at this debris coming in here.
Oh, yeah, look at all that debris. There's a Jeep right there in that front yard. Just looks like a lake, and that's just water from the river rushing into people's homes and in their yards. And here we are back at River Boulevard in Osceola. Look at this. We've been using the analogy so much, but I don't think you can overuse it. It looks like the Atlantic Ocean is rushing into the street here, rushing into Riverside. Nothing stopping the river at all. And we experienced high tide earlier. I'd have to check with the meteorologist, and maybe John and Tanika, you can help me with this question. We're not even in high tide, correct? I mean, this is just still the effects from Irma, but this isn't even the worst of it, right?
High tide actually has passed. It was from between like 11:30 to about 2:30 for much of our area, so we're on the backside of high tide now.
But what we are getting is that southerly wind from Irma moving north, blowing the water from the St. John's right to you, because you're right at the elbow of the St. John's where it makes that turn from going south north to west to east. And so that's why you're getting so much water continuing to flow into Riverside, because it's just basically the river's blowing, the water's being blown right into
the city.
And the next high tide cycle, guys, is at 2:30 tonight for the Main Street Bridge.
So 2:30 Tuesday morning is where when we expect the water to rise again from the ocean. And as I was saying before, you really getting hammered both ways here. You're going to be getting storm surge or the high tide coming in from the ocean from the east, coming in right to you, and then you're also getting the winds from Irma blowing up from the south and blowing all that water from the St. John's to you from the other direction.
And that's why it's so key right now, the rescues and the timing of them. They're trying to capitalize on the time that they have to try to navigate those roads. That truck that Russell's on, military-style truck, he said the tires go up 4 feet, so that's why they're able to drive through. We don't recommend anyone go out and do this. This is a family that has a special vehicle that can handle this. But again, the National Guard is also out there. We saw local first responders out there trying to make sure that people are cleared out of this neighborhood, because as you heard, they are not out of the woods yet. Russell, if you can still hear us, I saw you just went by and talked to neighbors. It sounds like you guys are just kind of checking on people. Have you heard, are people appearing to want to stay in their homes?
And Russell, really before you get started, and I hate to cut you off, we're going to come back to you, but we have a news briefing that we want to get to right now to get you the very latest on rescue efforts, damage from Irma, and of course power outages. Let's take you to that right now in downtown Jacksonville with Jacksonville Mayor Lenny Curry. Here we go.
If you were on the second floor today and you watched your neighbors be rescued, but you decided you were going to wait this out because you think the floodwaters are going to recede, they're not going to recede today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not the next day. So we want to get you out of there. We have capacity in shelters. Call 630-CITY and let us know. Major power outages, 250,000 customers out at this point. And as I said earlier, this is a strain all over the entire state. Most of the state of Florida is without power. So manpower will be strained, but our professionals will bust their butts to get your power back on. Generators. Reminder, please do not use generators in your garage or in your house. The fumes can kill you and you won't know it. You won't be able to smell them. Malfunctioning traffic lights are like a four-way stop. The sheriff will talk in a few moments about safety and traffic, but the two of us are working with the beach's mayors to assess the situation, ensure that it's safe, and do everything we can to open the bridges and get people back home. We know you want to get back to your homes. We're working aggressively to do it in a safe, orderly manner. I've been in communication all day with the governor, and the resources have also been provided for search and rescue. I just spoke a few moments ago with Senator Rubio, and he is working to ensure that we continue to have adequate supply resources for our shelters. To be clear, we will be moving to a recovery stage soon, but we are in a rescue stage at this point. People need to be safe, and we need to protect lives. And with that, I'll turn it over to Angie with the National Weather Service for a weather briefing, and then the sheriff, and then we'll take questions.
Thanks, sir. Hey, good afternoon. My name is Angie Agnetti. I'm your meteorologist from the National Weather Service. So before we talk about this epic river flooding that we're seeing, we'll just kind of touch on the winds. This afternoon, our sustained winds have come down. They're anywhere from 20 to 30 miles an hour now with gusts up to 50. So we are starting to drop below that sustained tropical storm force wind that we've been seeing for 12 to 18 hours across parts of our area. Irma has definitely left her mark on the city, and it's widespread wind damage in terms of power outage, like the mayor said, but at this time, very noticeably is the flooding issue that we have going on along the St. Johns River and its tributaries, including parts of the Trout River and in parts of the Ortega River as well. And this, as again, Mayor Curry said, this is going to be a long-lived flooding event. So what we're anticipating, we have crested at our high tide this afternoon at the Main Street Bridge. There's some other tributaries of the St. Johns, including Ortega, that will be coming up to their high tide in an hour or so. So there will be additional river rises on some of the tributaries. But in the main part of downtown, between the Buckman and the Main Street area here, we've reached our maximum value of what we anticipate to be the crest. And we will see a slow fall as we get into the evening hours. And the reason it will be slow is because we still have a good south wind pushing this river up in the downtown area. So maybe a water recession of about a foot over the next several hours, not significant by any means. As the mayor said earlier, we'll have a high tide tonight. That water's going to creep back on up, not as high as what we saw today. So there's going to be a gradual rise and fall, kind of like a slosh motion, if you will, within the river over the next several days as this water gradually tries to dampen and funnel back out to the ocean. So it's going to be a long-lived flooding type of event. So please continue to heed the advice of these men and women here, your emergency response team, they're working hard for you.
Sheriff.
So just a couple quick things in terms of safety. As we mentioned before, lots of standing water, lots of flooding. Do not drive your car through that standing water. Lots of dangers there, to include down power lines. We're still in a damage assessment phase, especially even at the beaches. So a lot of work left to do. All that being said, the bridges that are closed now, the Hart Bridge, the Main Street Bridge, all the bridge closures are due to flooding. So you'll be able to see that when you pull up to the bridge. that somebody will be there obviously to block that access to the bridge. No bridges are closed due to wind, and obviously the 4 ICW bridges are closed because we're doing damage assessments at the beach. As soon as those are done, we do not have a timetable when that will be. We will talk about communicating to everybody that the time that those will be open. But as of now, we do not have time. We are still working on, again, just beginning the early stages, early hours of damage assessment from the storm. So all that being said, as I mentioned earlier, do not stack up beach residents who are wanting to get back to the beach. Please don't stack up on Beach Boulevard, Atlantic Boulevard, JTB. You're blocking emergency vehicles that need to travel. Just wait until you get the word and then head back to the beach. We've had some reports of looting, or excuse me, rumors of looting. We've had some burglaries, but not widespread looting. So again, we're monitoring all of that. And if you have a medical emergency, do not use social media to ask for help on a medical emergency. Call 911. All the regular emergency services are in place and are up and running and accepting calls and responding to calls. So if you have an emergency that you would normally think to call 911 on, do it now. Nothing has changed with that. So, and again, just be safe.
Thanks. Questions?
On the bridge closures, should people, I mean, I know you're not going to give an exact time, but I mean, people, when they go to sleep tonight, should they think maybe there's a chance they'll be able to get back over tomorrow?
Working very aggressively.
Okay.
We've got an aggressive plan that's safe and orderly.
Sheriff Williams, you mentioned some reports of burglaries. Have those mostly been residential burglaries or business burglaries?
Just a combination of both, but nothing in terms of clusters, nothing unusual, honestly, in terms of volume. But it was described as looting, and that's not the case. So, everybody's been very patient, very orderly, very cooperative, and we would encourage everybody to continue to be done.
On the search and rescue operations, I mean, I think, Mayor, you had posted a video. I heard someone say something about they plucked 100 people out of a neighborhood or something. I mean, are those the kinds of numbers we're talking about here?
I mean, you did hear right on the video asking one of our best from JFRD said that in that area they had done about 100 just within one roadway.
Was that San Marco?
That was. And we saw similar efforts happening in Riverside, and I'm sure happening in other parts of the city as well.
Do you have any estimate as to what the total number is? I know your earlier briefing, you said there were 600 calls in 8 hours. Do you have any updated numbers?
We don't have a specific of the actual, we don't. But I can tell you that the men and women on the rescue efforts they're working hard. They're getting done.
Mayor, a question about JEA. Obviously, there's a lot of cut and toss to do. Obviously, power restoration is going slowly. When the cut and toss is largely done, are we going to see numbers move in the restoration, or is this going to be a slower process than last year?
Paul here? Yeah.
Well, the first step of the process is storm assessment. We're doing that now with all of our resources. Cut and toss, we're teaming with the city. We're in the ERAP process as well. So even if we had clear access at the moment, the winds are just tipping over to below sustained 40 miles an hour. And that gives us the opportunity to take advantage of the next 4 or 5 hours of daylight to get folks up in bucket trucks and work with restoration. So we have 500 people that are either vegetation management or line workers actively working on restoration, and they're going to work 16 hours a day until the next one.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, maybe I missed it. How many people are without power right now?
200.
250.
In Jacksonville, just, okay, thank you.
6.3.
Any update on school closures?
I don't think we've not been given an update from the superintendent at this point.
Okay.
So what's today?
Okay.
It's Monday, closed tomorrow, and we will get that information, that decision made, so people, families can plan accordingly.
When you said this was something on the magnitude of something we haven't seen in like 150 years, can you just unpack that a little bit?
Sure. We have, just to be concise, we have Cat 3 storm surge in a tropical storm. Is that right, Ian?
That's correct.
Cat 3 surge in tropical storm conditions. Serious stuff. Which is why we gave people plenty of time our first volunteer evacs, then mandatory evacs. And now here we are, and we want to make sure you're safe, so let us know so we can come get you and get you to a shelter. And if you can get out safely, get out and get to a shelter.
I have a question for Mr. McElroy. I know last year Mandarin was a very hard-hit area that was without power for longer than a lot of other areas. Do you have any indication at this point which areas in town can expect to see the longest power outages based on the damage you've seen?
We are doing a preliminary assessment right now. We have over 100 folks just doing the assessment. Later today, if winds can get sustained below 20 or at first daylight, we will have a helicopter that we brought in to identify those major tree canopy areas, and then we'll bring in drone support to get more precision in those areas. So we'll have better information after we get a full assessment.
All right. Anything else? Okay, we'll continue to give updates as things develop. And to the people of Jacksonville, keep praying, keep working. Take care of each other.
All right, you've been listening to Jacksonville Mayor Lenny Curry and the team of leaders there for the city and JEA, giving us the latest on the status of Irma after the storm. And a couple big takeaways. There have been hundreds of rescues from JFRD. A lot of folks working really hard out there. JEA says they have to have winds settle down before they can really get out there and get a good assessment of the vast amounts of damage that needs to be repaired before they can actually turn the power back on. And finally, I know a lot of people are asking about the bridges to get back to the beaches. And simply put, they don't know yet. They don't have a timetable yet. It's too early to say, and they're asking you not to go on Atlantic and Beach Boulevard and JTB and sit there and wait and line up because you're going to be clogging the roads for emergency vehicles that need to get back and forth.
Yeah.
We're going to let you know. They will let us know. They'll let you know on social media. We will get you that information as soon as it happens, and you can motivate or mobilize rather and get there as soon as you can. But it's not happening.
Also wanted to point out as we bring First Alert Chief Meteorologist Mike Burrish in, 250,000 power outages right now in the city. JEA says they have about 100 people out and about trying to assess damage. They'll be able to do more once the winds die down.
Right.
And they'll also bring in their drone support, which is a new element. Following Matthew with all of those outages, they have 4 people trained on those drones, so they'll be able to really get in there and see the tree canopy because we do have a lot of fallen trees.
Yeah, a couple things on that. First of all, the winds have to diminish us, and we mentioned that it's going to take a long time. This storm's huge. So people are now starting to say, when is the wind going to die? Goodness gracious, about sunset, give or take. So by 7, 8 o'clock tonight, sunset's a little after 7:30, we'll see the wind starting to come down. That'll help a lot.
It'll help, but of course the crews that want to be out there need daylight, a lot of them. So while the wind dies down, we still have to wait another 8 hours or so before the sun comes back up, too.
Yeah, and before they can really get rolling.
That's
exactly.
Right.
They can do some more diagnostics overnight. But
Yeah. I want to talk about the challenge of, I know the mayor said that right now they are in rescue mode. Their goal is to save lives. They'll focus on recovery later. Let's talk about the challenges that crews are going to face, those first responders and even neighbors once the sun goes down and the tide comes back in. We're talking dangerous conditions.
Yeah, once again, the water will go up. Each high tide cycle won't be quite as high as the next one, but we're far removed from major flooding on tide cycles, probably 48 hours or so. So we're looking at a tide cycle this evening in the middle of the night that will be significant, not as significant as the one that's occurring right now, or in many cases has occurred in the last hour or two. So that's going to help. And we won't have the wind impact. So the winds will calm down a lot. That'll make a difference, especially on that St. Johns River where it's flooding into Riverside and San Marco, where it's being pushed up into the city.
That video we're seeing from Russell Colburn, it looks like, while we are being told tide has gone down, and we know it has, you wouldn't know it because of that wind. It's just blowing waves. It looks like the Atlantic Ocean out there.
And it's going to be very subtle here for a while, at each high tide cycle, but it will improve, and not having the winds helps us a whole lot. So we've got that going for us, the winds coming down near or after sunset. And then tomorrow, the sun's going to shine, and it's a fine weather day if everything else was fine. Yeah. But it's going to be near 90 degrees in the afternoon. So versus Matthew, which was an October hurricane, and it really wasn't near as hot as it could have been because it was October. We're 3 to 4 weeks earlier now, and we're talking temperatures near 90 degrees the rest of the week. That's going to get pretty uncomfortable for those without power. And you guys were talking about re-entering the beaches. And we heard in the press conference there, it's not worth lining up. We learned that from Matthew, too.
Absolutely, long lines.
For hours.
Right, and I was sent to Jax Beach to do some live reports in the afternoon. We sat in that line. We didn't try to butt our way in there, because we're media or anything. We just sat in the line, and it was a long line. It was a long wait. There were a lot of people very impatient and whatnot. And an hour later, you could have just gone in and out as much as you wanted. And there's no need. If they say that the beaches, intercoastal and bridges are going to be open at whatever time it is, just let it pass, and about an hour later, try to get in there, and you'll just drive right in.
You won't wait. It won't be miserable. You'll save yourself hours of headache.
Yeah, and I understand the angst. It's like the plane, where you get on a plane and you want to be the first one off. Everybody jumps up, and then you just stand there, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing, and if you just kind of hang for a little while, it doesn't have to be very long, the traffic will funnel on through, and you'll be able to
And listen, we can tell you, too, I mean, we haven't been able to survey the damage, certainly at Jax Beach, but, Ben Becker's out at Jax Beach, and the one thing we can say with pretty good certainty is that the dunes that were restored have done their job. Now, they've taken a beating,
yes, they have.
but only breached in parts, and not very many. Certainly not like they were last year with Matthew.
Right.
And so that should be somewhat reassuring. Now, obviously, we can't speak up and down the coast, but that does appear to be promising because it's nothing like where we saw last year, where water had breached entire sections of dunes and it was swamping the entire area.
And if it hadn't been for the renourishment of the last 6 to 8 months, it would have been a very similar situation. And now we've got work ahead of us yet again to renourish again before the next storm. And it doesn't have to be a tropical storm or a hurricane. It could be a nor'easter in the wintertime like we get around here sometimes. It can be pretty intense yet. So it's tenuous, but yeah, the dunes did their thing.
I want to ask about this just because I know this is also on people's minds, and meteorologist Ariel Nixon touched on this. Hurricane Jose, Cat 2, but she says no impacts. Looks like it's heading northeast.
Well, we had to be a little careful.
People are concerned.
Yeah, and they rightfully so. It's going to do a loop over the next 5 days, and I still have to sit down and study the charts. And I really didn't study them a whole lot the last 24 hours, to be honest with you. I was more worried about immediacy and Irma. But the indications are after that loop, it comes out to the northwest. And so I believe if it affects the United States, and I don't think that's off the table, it would be the upper east coast and not the lower southeast U.S., which would be Georgia, Florida. And it may not even affect any part of the U.S., but it's going to come out of that loop, and I've got to sit down and study it and see what all the patterns are going on and what's going to affect that hurricane. But what it will do, though, is send waves our way. So not crashing waves as long as it stays far enough off, but we're going to notice it come this weekend into early next week, and I'll bet you surfers are counting it down because it's been a summer without much wave action. So, and speaking of which, we now have an offshore wind starting to develop, and it's a really smooth water, and surfers are going to want to get out there, maybe even swimmers. That water is still very dangerous. The rip current risk is extremely dangerous when you have a storm like this, and the waves have been crashing ashore for days. They develop little canyons, so to speak, on the beach, in the sand, and they can create their own rip currents. So you got to be
not to mention the debris that may be in the water as it's washed up and pulled away. Ben Becker was showing us sections of decking or whatever, all kinds of things. So,
and you'll find stuff down there. I know there's people down there treasure hunting right now because you'll find things you never usually typically see on our beaches. And in some cases, it's just as easy and fun as shells. Because you find shells that we don't typically have around here.
If I remember correctly, last year during Matthew, didn't they unearth a car that had been buried there since the 50s?
Yeah.
Incredible
stuff.
Yeah,
and at Michler's Landing, the part of a dock and pier that had been there in the 1950s was exposed that most people had no idea ever existed.
And Mike, I asked you the same question last year during Matthew, and I asked Garrett as well personally, what's your biggest takeaway now that Irma has passed? What is something that really sticks out to you about this storm?
Boy, a lot of stuff. What sticks is it had a personality of its own. From the beginning. Came off the coast of Africa as a tropical wave September 30th. 2 days later, a tropical storm. Within 24 hours, a hurricane. For the better part of 3 to 4 days, it was a Cat 5 hurricane. Difficult to predict. I mean, let's face it, it was a hard forecast to make. So long hours, long days, trying to figure out what was going to happen. The turn to the north that after a while, people were like, it's not turning north. And I said, yes, it's turning north. And we tried to explain what that was going to be that would cause that. And indeed, it did turn north. And the huge wrath of the breadth of the storm, just how huge it is. So that's what I'll remember probably at this point. And if I don't get power back soon, probably how long I didn't have power.
Yeah, we're all
which is understandable, though.
Absolutely.
We know they're working hard.
A lot of us are dealing with that.
Thank you so much,
Mike.
Okay.
Danielle Venable is live in Volano Beach. Again, one of the areas that was hit hard by Matthew last year, hit hard again. At least one house has collapsed. Deputies say there could be more.
Yeah, this morning a viewer shared video as he drove down A1A and then noticed at least one home was gone.
Wow, that was a house.
Yeah, one house gone, we think, there. Danielle is live there at Volano Beach. Danielle, you were right next to one of the houses that had collapsed off the cliff there.
Yes, the beach here has eroded after Hurricane Irma. There's really not much beach here at Volano Beach. We are at the North Beach access point. We keep driving south to see what kind of damage Hurricane Irma left behind. So we just got to this point, so we are seeing this damage together for the first time. So let's see what kind of damage is in this area of Volano Beach. We see some steps left behind, some steps. And if we walk down here, you can see there's a lot of debris in the road. And we're actually going to toss to the governor right now. He has some words about Hurricane Irma, and we'll come back to us.
I'm always amazed at the resolve of law enforcement, and we're seeing their commitment to families of our state today as they conduct search and rescue missions to keep people safe. Today, I want to thank the U.S. Coast Guard. I want to thank Admiral Schultz for taking me on today's tour to assess damage, and I'll talk that a little bit later. We have a wonderful Coast Guard. We have a wonderful military. And I can tell you, I can't say enough about how they have shown up and they're continuing to show up to do the right thing. Our military not only defends the freedom of this country, but they show up when there's a crisis. I just received a weather briefing on Tropical Storm Irma's continued path through our state. It's been downgraded to a tropical storm and has sustained winds of 65 miles per hour. Here's what we're seeing across our state. Storm surge across South and Southwest Florida range from 4 to 8 feet. Monroe County experienced an estimated 10 feet of surge at landfall. Miami-Dade experienced approximately 4 feet of storm surge. What's interesting about the storm surge is this is totally different than Andrew. A lot of us remember Andrew, and we didn't see the storm surge in Andrew. It was more of a wind event. In Tampa, we're seeing 2 to 4 feet of storm surge right now, and this will last throughout today. We're seeing surge of 3 to 6 feet along the Big Bend. And if you remember, the Big Bend and further in the Panhandle last year, and Irma got significant storm surge, and we saw a lot of damage. In Central Florida, in the Orlando area, we're seeing flooding due to a torrential rain of more than a foot. In Jacksonville and Northeast Florida, storm surge is 3 to 5 feet on top of more than a foot of rainfall, which is causing record and historical flooding along the St. Johns River. They also explained to me this morning in the weather briefing that Hurricane Jose is also pushing water into the northern part of our state, which is preventing the water from flowing out as fast. I spoke to Jacksonville Mayor Lenny Curry this morning and assured him that resources are being deployed. Fish and Wildlife Commission immediately deployed 3 search and rescue teams with 22 officers and 10 boats that were pre-staged in the region to Jacksonville. We're going to do everything we did. The way I look at it is, as governor, and all of us think this way, we want to keep everybody safe through this storm, and we want to keep everybody safe back after this storm, and we get everybody back to a normal life as quickly as possible. We've also deployed a 25-person team from the State Emergency Operations Center to the Emergency Operations Center in Putnam, Duval, and Clay counties in response to this historic flooding. We will continue to send resources to Jacksonville and any other community in need. Rainfall exceeding a foot in many communities in Northeast, Central, and Southwest Florida. Fortunately, the heaviest rain has cleared the state. However, this rain caused flash flooding in Northeast Florida. Rivers across the state continue to rise, and standing water remains an issue over the entire peninsula. The biggest threat for this week as Irma leaves Florida will be river flooding, and most of that's going to be in the northern part of the state. Stay attuned to local advisories for river flood watches and warnings. Families in Southeast and Northwest Florida, as well as the Tampa Bay area, need to be especially vigilant as local rivers could remain at flood levels into this weekend. And we generally see that in the I-4 corridor north. The heaviest winds have now left Florida, but the entire peninsula experienced at least tropical force winds with hurricane gusts being felt as far east and north as Jacksonville. Thankfully, the threat of tornadoes has diminished. We've received 7 reports of tornadoes, including 2 in Brevard County. The National Weather Service is working to confirm these reports. Giving this weather report, if your family and your family have evacuated, it's extremely important that you check with local officials before return home to make sure you can safely do so. Don't go back. Don't think just because this thing packed you can run home or passed you can run home. We've got down power lines all across the state. We've got roads that are impassable still across the state. We've got debris all over the state. Our goal, again, is don't put any more lives at risk. We already went through this horrendous storm. Don't put your life at risk because of down power lines, debris, impassable roads. This morning, I had the opportunity to travel with the Coast Guard and Admiral Schultz to survey damage throughout the west coast of Florida and through the Keys. I want to thank the Coast Guard for this opportunity. And here's what we saw. We saw the remnants of the storm surge along the west coast, but we didn't see I didn't see the damage I thought I would see. We clearly saw homes that were messed up. We clearly saw roofs that were off. We clearly saw boats out of the place and things like that. But I thought we would see more damage. And there's still flooding. There's still sand on the roads and things like that. But on the west coast, and this is confirmed by the mayors I've spoken to today, it's not as bad as we thought the storm surge would do. Now, when you get to the Keys, we were able to fly into the Naval Air Station in Key West, which as of just a few hours before we landed, had significant water still on it. But they worked to clear that. We went over all that area. We saw a lot of boats wash ashore. We saw basically almost every trailer park, they're overturned. I don't think I saw one trailer park that almost everything wasn't overturned. We still saw a lot of flood damage, and from talking to the officials down in the Keys, the water is not working, the sewer's not working, and there's no electricity. So it's very tough. The National Guard, and this is the Adjutant General Michael Calhoun, they've already gone all the way down to the Keys, and all the bridges are passable, the roads are passable. However, there's clearly some bridge damage, there's clearly road damage, but you can get down there and traffic. There's not a lot of traffic, which is good. It's moving. My heart goes out to the people in the Keys. I mean, there's devastation. And I just hope everybody survived. It's horrible what we saw. I know for our entire state, but especially for the Keys, it's going to be a long road. There's a lot of damage. I know everybody wants to get back to normal. I know everyone wants to get started, but again, you got to be patient. You got to get the first responders in the Keys. We got to get the water going again. We got to get electricity going again. We got to get the sewers going again. It's going to take a lot of time. I can tell you, everybody at the local level, the state level, and the federal level, everybody's working hard. Our brave members of local, state, and federal law enforcement, the National Guard, military members have been working around the clock to save people alive. We've got rescue teams with all sorts of equipment trying to make sure we don't have we don't lose anybody. If anybody's in harm's way, you can call your local law enforcement. You can call the state emergency hotline, which is 800-342-3775. Somebody will show up. We're working with FEMA. I can tell you the White House has been outstanding. I talked to President Trump 3 times yesterday. I talked to Administrator Brock Long with FEMA already today. I talked to him multiple times yesterday. I can tell you, I've talked to so many cabinet members. I talked to Vice President Pence yesterday. The White House and everybody at the federal level is showing up, and they are going to. My belief is they're going to show up and they're going to do everything they can. We've got, and I'll talk about a little bit the missions, the resources they're providing. DOT is working hard to clear the roads and inspect the bridges all across the state. We need DOT to inspect the bridges before people go back to these barrier islands and places like that. It's a top priority. It was a top priority after Matthew. If you don't need to be on the roads, don't get out. I mean, there's still more. Again, there's power lines, all sorts of things like that we're working on. Let me just go on down. I've never used this to do this before. The U.S. Navy, the Coast Guard, everybody's going to be providing resources. The Navy has deployed the USS Iwo Jima, the USS New York, and the carrier Abraham Lincoln to help with search and rescue and a lot of other things. Power outages. We have about 65% of the state out without power. It's going to take us a long time to get power back. I've been talking to the utilities. I'm having daily calls with the utilities to get the power back on. They're going to do everything we can. I've been talking to nursing homes all morning. I've been talking to assisted living. Everybody needs their power back on. I can tell you that they're bringing in 23,000 members. This is just what the utilities are doing, not including what the federal government's doing, not including the support of the military. Fuel. We're doing everything we can to get fuel back in the state. As you all know, we had fuel shortages last week. We had outages. We had a lot of shortages. The two big ports are Tampa and Port Everglades. Both of them have fuel in their tanks that they had to have in the tanks during the hurricane. We're getting that out through our carriers. We're giving them law enforcement escorts. We're doing the same with the utilities to get the trucks out as much as possible. We out of the state, and we're getting those down here as much as possible. I just tell you that everybody is going to work hard. But the way I think about it is we got to keep everybody safe. We've got to get our hospitals back open. We've got to get our fuel back here. We've got to get our roads open. We got to get everybody their electricity back. And I can't tell you anybody that's not working. My experience is everybody is working their tail off. And I'm unfortunately everybody's going to have to be patient because it's going to be a lot of work to get this done. This is not an insignificant storm. This impacted what's different here is it impacted our state. You could usually pre-position assets on one half of the state or the other. This one you couldn't because it was coming all the way down the state. So it was a lot of work. So I want to thank everybody, starting with the president. I want to thank everybody at the federal government. I want to thank everybody at the local government. I want to thank everybody at the state government. They have busted their rear, keeping us all safe. So now it's my distinct opportunity to introduce somebody I've enjoyed traveling with today, and I know that with his leadership, the Coast Guard is going to be an unbelievable partner in this. Admiral Schultz.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. As our acting Secretary Elaine Duke said this morning, the Department of Homeland Security has been preparing for Irma to arrive first in the Caribbean and here in Florida for the good part of more than a week. The Coast Guard has been reconstituting our forces today. We've got our first aircraft back here in Miami in Clearwater, helicopters that arrived from sea-based cutters, and we'll be reconstituting our force in force, bringing our people back into the state. This has been a very challenging storm in the fact that it covered the entire state. And our business model essentially is we flow our resources away so we can be the first back. This storm posed some challenges there. Requests for search and rescue so far have been very, very, very low. We've had enjoyed an exceptional partnership with a very capable Florida emergency management team, with our DoD, Department of Defense, and National Guard partners, and with state and local agencies, first responders. And the Coast Guard remains committed to supporting the state of Florida and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and I'll stand by for any questions. Thank you.
As you all know, we had a significant evacuation effort in the state. Our highway patrol did an unbelievable job keeping the roads open, making sure evacuation roads were open. We, of course, had to add some not contra lanes, but shoulders. But our highway patrol did a great job. So now we have Major De La Pretra here from Highway Patrol.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Governor. We appreciate your guidance, leadership, and support throughout this entire process. It's been overwhelming. The Admiral, General, the support of the military personnel that are supporting local law enforcement, our first responders, has been nothing short of spectacular. On behalf of the Florida Patrol, we would like to urge all motorists in the South Florida area, Monroe, Miami-Dade, through Broward County, to please avoid any unnecessary travel on our roadways. Help law enforcement, our first responders, and all of our recovery personnel, the fuel tankers, the utility trucks, and everyone else that's going to be involved in this lengthy process. Please assist us by staying off the roadways unless it's absolutely necessary, and most of all, overnight to comply with the curfews that are in place. It'll greatly enhance and help us accomplishing getting everyone back to a normal way of life. Thank you.
I called up 7,000 members of our National Guard. The National Guard shows up when there's a crisis. They've been deployed over 100 times since 9/11, but in crises like this, they always show up. We're also getting National Guards from around the country. Here we have Major General Michael Calhoun.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor.
And we are
Coast Guard, along with some of our other sister services, for our support today and getting us down so we can evaluate the common operating picture. The Florida National Guard.
And we apologize. We're having some issues with that video feed there. But Governor Scott basically reiterating that the storm has passed. Again, also stressing that they're focused on saving lives, keeping people safe. He's telling people, don't venture out if you don't have to. Let the first responders do their jobs. And John, also want to mention, he's also getting some of his first looks at the Keys, and he just said the Keys have been devastated. And we talked about that with Marty.
Yesterday we had Marty on and the former emergency director here in Duval, and now is down in Monroe County, which is in charge of the Keys.
Yeah.
That's obviously where the Keys are. So it just really powerful, dramatic stuff that we're going to get a better idea of the scope of the damage in the Keys in the coming days. But right now it's really so bad we can't even really assess it.
They're just getting their first look at that damage.
The governor also mentioning working with Mayor Curry and also saying really the biggest threat right now is river flooding in North Florida. So he's definitely in tune with what's happening here in Jacksonville, throughout Northeast Florida and Southeast Georgia as well. But the governor talking about sending in resources they've been sending. They're going to continue to send. So he and Mayor Curry have been on the phone. He's been on the phone with President Trump multiple times. And so this is going to be a storm, of course, that the state's going to be dealing with along with the city for a long time.
Yeah. Now we're going to go back out live to our Danielle Avidable. She's showing us some damage in Volano Beach where homes are essentially dangling at the ocean's edge.
Yeah, we are driving south on A1A. We just made it to Volano Beach. We are at the North Beach access point. You can see there's a lot of debris in the roadways, a lot of people coming out here, taking pictures, checking out the damage that Hurricane Irma left behind. We're going to continue walking south on A1A to check out some of the damage. You could see there are pieces of a walkway from people's back porches that have flown across the street. A lot of debris over here. We have a pole that fell down. If we look over here to my right, you can see this whole fence just completely blew away to this apartment complex over here. There's no longer a fence. These are pieces of the fence. As we were driving down here, we saw a lot of roofs that blew off, a lot of shingles. We saw, steps as well. Here's a whole staircase from somebody's back porch. Yeah, just a lot of debris over here. Pieces of poles. There are a lot of down power lines in this area, so be careful if you're out taking pictures, walking around. Okay, so here's a portion of that fence that's over here. You have some driftwood, some pallet boards. Yeah, it's just incredible. There's a lot of debris down this road. There's some minor flooding down some of the roads. But this beach has eroded here at Volano Beach. A lot of the homes just dangling off the cliffs. Their back balconies are dangling off the cliffs. There's about a 15-foot drop. I spoke with a guy who lives out here, and he said that most of the erosion is from Hurricane Matthew, and then when Hurricane Irma came in, it just really eroded it even more. Okay, so we're going to walk across the street. You see, this is just a walkway, somebody's walkway from their back balcony down to the beach. This might actually be from the access point over here. Here's somebody's mailbox. So we're going to continue to check out this damage. We're actually going to walk down to the beach and try to get a look up from where those homes are hanging off from the cliff. But we'll come back to you after we do that. Back to you guys in the studio.
Debris everywhere, just overwhelming. Okay, we've got Action News Jax Russell Colburn rescuing somebody or helping with a family that's there rescuing people in Riverside. You've got a gentleman need some help, Russell.
Yeah, John, what you're looking at right now is David Gillum in the front. He's been driving around in his truck saving people all morning long, and behind him, that's 75-year-old Jerry Mitchell. So here's the story about him. Last night, around 1 o'clock this morning, he went out on a run trying to get some supplies for him and his wife, and he realized he wasn't going to make it back. He decided to sleep in his car and ride out the storm there. He actually said it wasn't that bad. It wasn't too scary. But now he's getting his first chance to get back home. Right now, this David helping him get to his wife. His wife is in there. We'll hopefully greet him here in a second, but that's him walking to his house in these knee-deep, it was really waist-deep floodwaters from where we first let him off this fortified military-style truck that we've been riding around in. David helping him up on his porch. You can see the floodwater up onto, it looks like the second or third step there, helping him all the way in. And he lives right against the St. Johns River. There's just a couple more houses behind him on Goodwin Street here. We're at Goodwin and St. Johns Avenue. He's getting into his home. And we just actually caught up with him moments ago as he was being loaded here onto the truck and taken to safety.
Do I look that bad? No. This area normally floods. We took one car down in the afternoon. Yeah, she's there. And then about 1 o'clock, I could hear the rain was coming and coming and coming. I said, I don't believe it. I'm going to have to make a second trip. She said, how are you going to get back? I said, I won't. I'll just stay in the car overnight. The sun comes up and I'll drive home. When the sun came up, this is what was there. So I waited and waited and waited, and then went out looking for, well, I don't want to hold you guys up.
Yeah, what was it like in that car as the wind and rain were beating you?
It's not that bad. Yeah. I got to watch the Cowboys and the Giants.
How was it to get back home?
Huh? Feels good. How deep is that now? Thank y'all so much, really.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're a little taller than me. I'm not. All right, and you're watching David get back over to the truck. He just helped that man get home to his wife. She greeted him at the door. Great moment. I want to show you something else, too. We're actually joined by a CBS Network news crew that's here in town, and David Begnaud is here. David, you've been reporting all up and down the coast, covering Hurricane Irma. What have you seen, and how does it compare to here in Jacksonville? The truck just lurched us backwards here. David.
Good to see you, Russell. Look, we started in Fort Lauderdale before the storm moved in. I think what has surprised me the most, having covered Harvey in Texas and then coming to Florida, is how much this storm trotted to the left and back to the right, and it changed literally by the hour. We kept talking to the Weather Service. I started in Fort Lauderdale. We thought it was coming up the East Coast, and then we moved to Tampa, and then Tampa ended up being in the free and clear. And then we drove to Jacksonville, and we're actually headed on our way to Charleston tonight because of the flooding there. It's been incredible, and you guys are the experts. You were telling me, having covered this area for 4 years, you've never seen it quite this bad.
Never.
Right? I cover flooding all the time. I have never seen a river rush into a neighborhood quite like this.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. The only thing that compares would be St. Augustine and Avenida Menendez during Hurricane Matthew when the water was rushing over the seawall, and that's what we've seen here in these flooded streets in Riverside. So much debris here collecting on the road, waist-deep water that we've been saving people. So you're headed to Charleston next, and it just speaks to the unpredictable nature of this storm and what we've been seeing.
Well, look, there are a lot of people who are saying, hey, Florida hyped this up and it didn't turn out to be a big deal. Maybe it didn't in your area, but when you talk to the folks here, you talk to the people living in the Keys, this is why they blew the whistle as loudly as they did.
Absolutely.
Again, floodwater, and you know this, Russell, from covering weather. Floodwater is more often than not more deadly than winds. You drown in it, people drive in it, people walk in it, and that man we just saw slept in his vehicle. He's 78 years old. It's a good thing he didn't try and, get risky overnight and try and walk in. So we will continue covering it. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you, David, and thank you for your excellent coverage all across the country. We're going to take you now down Margaret Street, and this is where Memorial Park will meet us here on our left. And you can see the St. Johns River just rushing down this street. And what we've been saying is you really can't tell where the St. Johns River ends and the street begins. It's just all one body of water, and there's waves in this water. It's just rushing in. And live on our air in the last couple hours, you saw the wind blowing us over in the back of this truck. We'll see once we get to this opening next to this building how hard the wind is blowing now. But yeah, we were feeling it already. It is gusting. It hasn't let up whatsoever. Wow. There's some sea spray there right into our faces, right into the camera. I'm not sure exactly what you can hear on the mic, but man, it is heavy wind and rain here at Memorial Park where the water is just rushing in. If we can give you a look to the left, you can see the water rushing in the park. People have gone in, and that's smart. We had a lot of people out taking pictures and video. They have gone in, and that's a good thing. Let's give you another look over here. Rob, if you can turn to the right, that's that condo we showed you earlier. You can see the door off its hinges coming apart, 2 doors there, and that's where people live. The left side is a parking structure, but right there we have a garage and an opening and a door, and it's just unbelievable. Easily 3 or 4 feet of water rushing in there right now, not even in the midst of high tide.
Russell, if you...
So we're going to continue to...
Real quickly...
Okay, I believe someone has a question for us. Go ahead.
Russell, yeah, I sure do. I have a question for you. As you've been out here now going to the same areas back and forth over the last couple of hours, you still see the wind. It's about 25-mile-an-hour winds right there in that area as the waves come crashing over the sea wall, the river wall there. How does the water level appear to you? I mean, we're well past high tide. It should be going down. Is it going down at all?
No, I don't think it's gone down at all. Rob, what do you think? No, we agree. My photographer, Rob Bourne, and I agree. This water has not gone down one bit. It's just as fierce and high and choppy as it has been. Well, I mean, you can see that those concrete pieces sticking up, that's the wall to hold the river. So it's barely visible right now, okay? That gives you an idea. To say it's no match for the water here is understating it. It's just been gushing over here and gushing over here, and thankfully it's no longer high tide, because we could be dealing with a much worse situation than we already are. So we're gonna come back in. We've been out here a long time, don't want to flood the engine of the truck, and we'll bring you live reports as we're able, but it's borderline dangerous out here with the wind and rain and the surf. So let's go back to you guys.
Absolutely, absolutely, Russell. You guys do what you need to do. But again, that just goes to show you high tide has come and gone. And, you know, as we heard the mayor and Chief Meteorologist Mike Burge talk about, with that wind blowing up from the south on the St. Johns River, it's going to be a slow process to get all of that water out of there. It's going to be days. Because even though tide has gone from high, it should be receding. We're not seeing any of that right now in that area because of the situation with the St. Johns River and where Riverside is and the winds involved. We want to go now to Amber Kriska. She is live with some neighbors at the Trout River, also with flooding.
A scary situation for one family living along the Trout River. They were in their home last night when they were alerted by Action News Jax there was a tornado warning in their area. Chief Meteorologist Mike Burge said, get in your safe place. The family tells me they were hiding in a closet. Next thing you know, this huge tree crashed into their home, and you can just see how massive this tree is. They tell me that it actually shifted their home. You can also see several other trees just came crashing down as well, ripping power lines. And you can just see these down power lines here. The power is out in this area. I would say there are probably dozens of other down trees as well. There's a lot of flooding in this area. But the good news in all of this, that we're not hearing any reports of injuries. Reporting on the north side, Amber Kriska, Action News Jax.
And getting some updates into the Action News Jax newsroom from local schools. St. Johns County schools and Clay County schools will both be closed Wednesday. We're still waiting to hear from Duval County schools right now and any other districts. As we know, we will pass it on to you. But again, St. Johns County schools and Clay County schools both closed Wednesday. Well, a woman led us into her flooded home around the Trout River, and here's what she had to say.
You can't see my pool.
Oh, oh wow, there's supposed to be a pool back here.
Yes, it's supposed to be a pool right here. The pool is right there in the middle.
The good news is that woman and her family left their home, but you do see some flooding there on the floor inside of their house. Now, another person living along the Trout River, we found him trying to save his chickens earlier today. So a lot of pets also being rescued. I think Romney was in Black Creek earlier. She saw someone taking their Yorkie out and their belongings, also in had the Yorkie in one arm, their belongings in a plastic bag in the other. So people just trying to save what's important to them, no matter what it is, and at least they're able to get out, and hopefully they found a safe place to go.
Yeah, we saw the otter swimming around
we did.
Just a few minutes ago, and yesterday we were talking about the manatees being rescued from Tampa. So you gotta take care of the animals as well. Action News Jax Lorena Inclan is in St. Augustine, where the flooding has started to recede a little bit. At least last time we checked in with her, we could see some pavement on the road, which is a good sign. Lorena.
Hey, John, yeah, and you know what? Besides the flooding that as you mentioned, it's receded, so that's the good news. There's still some flooding over there, but I do want to show you some other things that we've been seeing around here a lot, and that's fallen trees. In this case, it's a damaged historic cemetery. Take a look at this. There's a huge tree that fell over, damaging some headstones, and if we continue walking, you can see how it's pretty widespread here. This is the historic Huguenot cemetery right off of Avenida Menendez in front of the fort. And it is pretty badly damaged with fallen trees. Take a look over here. You can see that huge trunk over there. It looks like it twisted off of that trunk and then fell right onto the ground here. So this is widespread. We've been seeing this all over St. Augustine. We're going to be seeing in the coming days a lot of tree removal happening. These are all over the place on the road, blocking some roads. So I also wanted to point this out because besides the flooding, this is going to be a major cleanup effort because we've been seeing this all over the city. Now, as far as I know, they still have the bridge open as well. And as you mentioned earlier, that the St. Johns County schools will be closed through Wednesday as well. So we're continuing to walk around and to drive around and speaking to people here, taking a look at the damage here in St. Augustine. For now, back to you guys.
All right, thank you so much, Lorena. New information now coming in from Georgia.
Worth County, central Georgia area, they're reporting one person dead from Tropical Storm Irma. We had one person killed in the storms in St. Johns County.
Yes.
Elderly couple believed to maybe one person there had a heart attack during the storm as they were trying to escape. So Irma has been deadly in the Keys, has been deadly here in our area in northeast Georgia, northeast Florida as well. And we're going to continue to follow Irma and track Irma. We've got some video now of firefighters, Jacksonville firefighters in their boat there rescuing folks in San Marco. We've had a lot of rescues happening in Riverside. We've had a lot of rescues happening on the other side of the St. Johns River in San Marco. In fact, the mayor in his latest news conference said there were hundreds of rescues. These men and women have been working hard, nonstop, since it's been safe for them to go out there to help our neighbors in need. And this is just one of countless examples. In fact, the mayor himself was with some firefighters in San Marco earlier today, watching some of these folks in action. So again, a big shout out to the first responders and the neighbors that are working alongside these professionals to do what needs to be done to get people to safety.
And now we also have some additional video. This is from the top of One Ocean in Atlantic Beach. It lost its backup generator this morning. We do have some crews staying there. I know Ben Becker, who have been showing us damage all along Jax Beach, he's actually staying there as well. But look at that. You can just see that water rushing up. Now, we know that some of the dunes there were breached, but nothing like what we saw during Matthew. Those dunes did their job, even though they were new and the sea oats hadn't had their full year to take hold rather. But you can see the water just rushing up there in Jax Beach from this view from One Ocean. Now in Brunswick, police are also sharing pictures of damage that they've come across up there in Glenn County, Georgia. Look at that, a tree across a car. You can see traffic lights dangling there, and a gas station had some damage as well. Police say they are still seeing strong winds, so they're still asking everyone to stay off the roads. Our continuing coverage as we track Irma. We'll be right back after the break. Stay with us.
A beautiful smile can light up the world. At Concord, we train students for careers that help build beautiful smiles. Accelerated learning that can earn you your diploma in as few as 8 months, with day and nighttime classes that fit your needs. The kind of personal attention and mentoring that will prepare you for a career that will not only change your life, but the lives in your community. Train to be a dental assistant at Concord. Opportunity awaits at concord.edu.
To all the men and women that serve our country,
overseas as well as here in the U.S.
We'd like to thank you for your service.
For all you do for us to keep us safe.
And the sacrifice that you put in for us.
Thank you for all you do for our country. Thank you for serving our country.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you for your service.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brought to you by Florida Home Air Conditioning Jacksonville. Thank you for keeping us safe at home.
And when there's a hurricane like Irma approaching, it's not too much to say that I lay awake at night sometimes thinking about the forecast.
What we're called to do is to let people know the information they need to know, and there's nothing more important than the safety of the people of Jacksonville.
Preparing can help. Having information helps.
Responsibility, it weighs heavily on me, to be honest with you.
I have 3 girls. They knew the storm was coming, and they knew Dad was going.
We are going through this storm with you, and we will be with you on the other side.
Peace of mind. It's one of the most important things we can have, and sometimes it's the most elusive. Nursing home abuse can go undetected for long periods of time. Some examples are bed sores, bruises, or falls resulting in fractures. We're the law office of Anajar and Levine. If you or a loved one has been the victim of nursing home abuse, we can be reached 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Call Anajar and Levine at 1-800-747-FREE for a consultation.
Live from CBS 47 and Fox 30 Action News Jax, this is continuing coverage of Hurricane Irma after the storm.
And thanks so much for joining us. Irma moving through Georgia as a